Hello, everybody. Good morning, or I should say morning here in Houston. Good afternoon, or almost good evening to wherever you are in the world. I wanted to give a small but really powerful and strong lesson in terms of an insight in this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha is Korach, and we know that Korach has this story where he was the first cousin of Moses and was very upset at the fact that he wasn't included in getting a position of power in the, I would like to call the Moses administration. He was left out and he was very, very upset about it, and he confronted Moses and Aaron and he started rounding up the troops, which actually included 250 Sanhedrin members, the heads of the Sanhedrin, so great people in those times. And he got everybody to come on board with him in his insurgence against Moses and Aaron for what he claimed was them just taking all the power and keeping it all the positions of power, keeping it to themselves and for themselves. And the question is, a very great question, is that Korach wasn't a small man in his own right, and the 250 heads of the Sanhedrin were great people. How did everybody come to this fall, where the end of the story is a terrible tragedy, how they all argued with Moses and Aaron, and Moses asked God to set up some kind of way through a certain story that's not, the details are not important right now, how to prove that what Moses and Aaron did was by the word of God, and God telling him to do that he should become the king of the Jewish people and Aaron be the high priest, and for whatever reason Korach was skipped over. But how did all these great, amazing, high-level people fall to such a low state? And it's a question which is very disturbing to all of us, and I believe that an answer, which is a powerful lesson for life, is in order. And the answer that I believe is that all these people were obviously great people and amazing people, but we know the Torah tells us, the Talmud tells us, that the greater a person is, the greater his yetzer hara, his evil inclination is. And so, as great as these people were, on their level, certain challenges are even greater, and their evil inclination is even greater. Keeping that in our minds for a moment, transferring to ethics of our fathers, it tells us that there are three things which extricate a person from this world. And those three things are kina, which is jealousy, ta'ava, which is desire, and kavod, which is honor. And each one of those three things in their own right have a way of literally extricating a person from this world. And as we know, the story in the end of the Korach's fight with Moses and Aaron is that there were actually all these heads of Sanhedrin perished from the world at the end of this entire episode. And I believe that the answer over here is a twofold. First part is that, keeping all those different Talmudic points in mind, is that a person very often when he's doing something, he has a certain feeling, this is what I believe, that he knows what he's doing is wrong. If when you have Moses and you have Aaron and they performed so many miracles and they were such great people, Moses was known as the humblest person that's ever lived. That's what the Torah describes him as. And then you have somebody else who is his first cousin, who is a good person or maybe even a great person, but something's a little off with the fact that he's going up against the greatest Torah scholar and the greatest Torah leader of the Jewish people and fighting with him. And I personally believe that as great as a person is, they have an evil inclination which is even greater, and they're able to have a greater struggle. But them seeing this fight going on, a person, there are different ideas brought down in the beginning of this week's Parsha, how people generally feel connected to, a pack just running and trying to fight something. It's a natural feeling of a person, and being that their evil inclination was greater, they had a stronger urge to join. And if you read details in the beginning of the Parsha, it discusses a lot about the fact that Korach's point of reference to everybody to get them to argue with Moses and Aaron was mainly the fact that the positions of power, the positions of honor within the Jewish people are being set up just for Moses and Aaron, like we mentioned earlier, and the Moses administration is being given to his direct family, his brother, and not the people not the other people, not his cousins, etc., etc. And if we think about this, we see that these people ended up joining his team against Moses because essentially it was honor that was pulling them. And when he brought to them this idea, this point of reference that, everybody, if we come and fight against Moses, then we can all get positions of power, essentially what that is telling us that they're fighting for their own honor. They weren't fighting for any good cause. They weren't trying to make anything better for the Jewish people. Nothing was changing. Moses and Aaron, everybody agreed, were great leaders. It wasn't going to become a better leadership kind of community if they were involved. It was just their own personal honor. And as we mentioned in Ethics of Our Fathers, it tells us that honor is one of the three things which can literally extricate a person from this world. And I believe that we all, as a lesson to ourselves, no matter how great we are, or how great we think we are, we may be better off not thinking that we're so great to begin with, but we have to realize that there's a strong evil inclination to have us run after these three things: honor, desire, and jealousy. And it can make even the greatest person, the greatest Torah scholar, be able to, fight against Moses and Aaron and have a terrible, tragic ending, as we see in this week's Torah portion. And there's a feeling, and this is really what I want to get at, that we all have and we all know deep inside of us when we're doing something, if it's right or if it's wrong. And generally speaking, the way to gauge that is if it's involving honor, desire, or jealousy, and we're fighting so strong against something that possibly could be wrong, it's a good gauge for us to tell ourselves that it might be wrong if that's what we're fighting about, our own personal honor, or in a scenario of jealousy or something to do with desire. Have a wonderful Shabbat.